That's bad. You sold those. Keep it all in. Like it was still standing on the level. Yeah. Yes. All right, we'll call to order the Airplane Commission meeting for March the 6th. Stand for a pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Brenda, can you do the roll call, please?
Atkins. Here. Bothwell.
Here.
Royals.
Here.
Cottle.
Here.
House.
Here.
Hiley.
Here.
Hicks.
Here.
Hunt.
Here.
Knuckles.
Here.
Todd.
Here.
Wright.
Here.
Reedy.
Here. All right, so the minutes were sent out in the packet or online. Do the minutes from February the 6th.
Mr. President,
Yes, sir.
I have a correction in 6.2,
6.2.
about the middle there. Said Mr. Hiley made a motion, goes on, and concludes with Mr. Kaus, Director Malott, and Mr. Persinger, research funding for a lawyer through the state. That's not correct. The motion was to have a review of the ordinance coordinated by those people by AIM, Accelerate Indiana Municipalities.
They were supposed to look into feasibility. So how would you like that? Just to do research on that? Well, that's what kind of said, the research funding.
Research
Funding for a lawyer through state.
Research or review of ordinance by AIM,
Rather than state.
Well, it's not a matter of funding, it's just having them,
Them to have that,
having them to give us their
okay,
opinion.
so it's not funding to
Right.
have a review.
Yeah.
You got the gist of that, Brenda, what they are trying to set down?
Yeah.
Any other questions, concerns?
I do. I have a couple, sir.
Okay.
6.1.4, just above the 6.1,
Uh-huh.
where it says President Reedy made a motion. I believe that you did not make a
No.
motion. You declared or stated that
There'd be,
you'd like to discuss. So we need to do something. I think I made a motion now. We made a motion. We did a vote.
no, we did not. Just that we moved it or,
Made a motion to table.
well, but we didn't really vote. We just moved it,
Yeah, he just moved it.
moved it to the next meeting.
And
And then you got another one?
one other question I have, I noticed at the end of some of this, which is still part of the minute, we have text amendment to area-wide zoning for ordinance for BZA.
Where's this?
The BZA, clear back to the back, start to page 1 back here.
Right.
I don't think we ought to have that in our minutes. We didn't,
Well,
we're
minutes,
not the BZA.
I don't think the minutes went that far. The minutes stopped at 7, adjournment.
What is the
That's not-
BZA stuff in here?
That's text amendments to the area-wide zoning ordinance. That is the area plan commission's responsibility.
That's for our information, wasn't part of the meeting.
So the BZA currently, as you saw, we were about halfway through the rules of procedure. We've done rules of procedure and the area-wide ordinance, the state code. So those are changes in the BZA and the ordinance. So they're text amendments, basically changing the area-wide ordinance. So that's for the area plan commission to review and recommend on.
We need to review the BZA's This is not for the BZA to review and adopt,
They are not part of the amendment of the ordinance.
but we do need to do this in the name of the BZA. I guess I don't understand.
Yeah, anytime we make a change, a text amendment to the area-wide ordinance, change the law in Grant County, it starts with the area plan commission. The public hearing to the commissioners for, we send forward a recommendation to the commissioners anytime we change the text of the law.
So then, is this coming to us from the BZA?
It's for us to start reviewing. The VCA is working on rules of procedure right now. And then with that getting done, I'm gonna start reviewing it to make sure that all three are the same.
This is not something for action for tonight.
It's just to know, just to take a peek at it. Because when we get this done, we'll be into rules of procedure for us.
Yeah.
And do it at the same time.
Anybody else have any adjustments or notes? Okay, so we got, two corrections. One would be, 6.14, 6.1.4. Continuation, they're moving the hearings to this meeting, and then, the correction is 6.2. Any other corrections? We'll take a motion to approve that with the amendments.
I so move.
Riley makes a motion. Do we have a second? Call the roll, please.
Atkins,
Yes.
Bothwell,
Yes.
Royals,
Yes.
Cottle,
Yes.
House,
Yes.
Hiley,
Yes.
Hicks,
Yes.
Hunt,
Yes.
Knuckles,
Yes.
Todd,
Yes.
Wright.
Yes.
Thank you. Now we'll move on to old business. Back on the docket is, Joe McCoy's petition to have a rezoning. Are we going to proceed with that? We have, I know we were supposed to maybe look at potential options that he would have. Did anything transpire out of that, Brian, or
Mr. McCoy has asked that the public hearing continue.
tonight?
Yes.
Okay. So we had a public hearing at our last meeting. I had comments for and against. It was tabled at that time. For further research, I'm not sure what all transpired on that. So we are back to considering the rezoning, correct?
Correct.
All right, so we already had our public hearing. We really do not need to open that back up.
We have had some, Mr. Shannon did bring in some pictures
Okay, that's what we have handed out.
that he had taken because he didn't have time. He had stated it before the last meeting. I believe, I don't know, you want to say? Yes. With your permission.
Do we want to open it back up for discussion? This would be discussion. This is not part of the public hearing. We're not redoing the public hearing. We want to find out more information.
Could I just preface this, just for clarification? The APC has jurisdiction to set zoning. But for a special exception, that's the jurisdiction of the BZA.
Right.
So anything related to questions of green shielding, drainage, a lot of these other issues, which I understand are important issues, but those are not issues under the purview of the APC.
We're just here.
We're strictly determining the zoning.
The zoning, and then
Yeah,
go for
and-
an exception.
Yeah, then they would need to go to the BZA and answer all their questions on those issues. I just want to make sure we're staying in our lane as well as the BZA in their lane.
Okay.
And then maybe I would add to that, just my personal perspective, is that this property has been used for general business for probably over 50 years. And, so a vote to rezone to general business, I believe, whether you say corrects the zoning or whatever, it makes the zoning consistent with what its use has been for half a century and does not say the box factory can or cannot go there, because that's not our purview. They still, if it's zone general business, Mr. McCoy would still need to go to the BZA for a special exception.
Well, we're getting a little ahead of ourselves because the thing, if I'm gonna allow Mr. McCoy to speak, then I think I need to allow the other side to speak. Mr. Wright?
Yeah, Mr. President, we did meet, had a good meeting and things with the mayor here in Marion and stuff. And I can honestly tell you, there's just not any buildings, as crazy as that sounds, around. We took a look. I know they took him around and was unable to attend that. So that another meeting I had to go to, but we did try to find some possible other locations and stuff. One thing I did find out though, that I don't believe Mr. McCoy mentioned was he actually lives right across the street from this property. And so I can kind of see why it's kind of a valuable piece of property to him. That it would be easy to access for him to check on the business and things through the day. And so that's pretty much all I've got to say. It's just the fact that we took a look.
Pride and effort.
Yeah, I mean, you know, and I appreciate them kind of taking a look and seeing what we did have. And we did think we had an opportunity to condoize a larger building and things like that. It sold the night before. So it was just an interesting thing. I mean, we thought we might have had something, but at the same token, it just didn't materialize. So we made a valiant effort. So that's all I have for a report.
So there are objectives, we do maybe 5 minutes on Mr. McCoy and then 5 minutes of a counter. That way, it's equal time. And then we'll go back to discussion on what we want to do. All right. And we'll give you 5 minutes and then we'll give the opposing side 5 minutes. If we can kind of keep track of time.
Thank you.
Chuck, before you start,
Yes.
it's a request to go from ag to light industrial, correct?
General business. General business.
Yes.
His original request.
Okay,
General,
I was just looking.
Okay, yeah,
Sure, I didn't
you're right on target. Yeah.
general business. Okay.
APC,
Yeah.
thank you for receiving me once again. I appreciate it. In your last meeting, Mr. Wright did request to table the subject. We did meet, we did weekly with the mayor. There were some properties offered to us. The old SS Wire facility, building out here. All of them are way beyond the scope of our budget. We don't have that much money. We did look at some other properties. The gentleman over here did state straightly, we got another hurdle to go through, even if you folks approve our zoning request. We do think our zoning request is just and true. The fact that we have been taxed, the current taxation on that property is commercial. And that it has been used for commercial purposes for, someone said 50 years, and I concur with that. So that's what we're requesting of you. We've given no hard plans or building renderings or anything like that, because there's no sense of us going through that expense, those efforts, if you say no. So this is our first stop. We're going through the civil process as you folks have defined it. We've done everything that Director Malak has asked of us. And so we do ask that you vote in affirmative, to approve this. If you don't, we do ask that the commissioner hear us, that we want to be taxed accordingly if this has got to go to residential property or what have you. So we ask you vote in favor of this to match up with the historical use and the historical taxation. That's basically all I have this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Have anybody that wants to speak on the other side for no more than 5 minutes?
Still got 3 minutes.
What's that?
3 minutes.
So we got 3 minutes left on this?
Yep.
So there's 3 more minutes left on the good side, or I would say the good side. 4. Four. Yes, that was like word there.
You're doing five.
5 and 5, so is there anybody else? Just got a few minutes in support. I do not see anybody indicating for support, so we will go to the opposing side. I say gentlemen wanting to stand up here and say, and state your name. I think there might be a sign-in sheet there.
Yeah.
Justin Shannon.
While he's signing in, just a point of order. We just received this tonight. I know there was, Mr. McCoy had brought something that he wanted to show that he didn't get in on time. Is this kind of
Did this
that
come to
kind
the
of?
office before, the 24 or 48 hours, whatever it was?
Okay, very good. Okay, very good.
Yes.
Just want to clarify point of order. So, thank you.
And we did hand out after the last meeting with Mr.
Yes.
McCoy.
Yes. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Proceed.
Okay, so you've all got the pictures there, correct? Okay, so the one shows the flooding, pretty well, and whether it's a tile or not, having the land build up around the property isn't helping that issue. You can see where the water is coming from. There's several things, you know. Keep telling you, ask yourself, do you want a property next or a factory next door to your house? But, yeah, no, then everybody see the picture of the mailbox that's been laying on the side of the road? Because, yes, this is a couple 100 feet from Joe's front door. And my point with it is if you can't, the mailbox has been laying there since our last meeting. If you can't walk over there and pick that mailbox up, how well are you gonna take care of a property with a whole factory on it? Okay, it's been laying there a month. It's either here nor there, okay? It's considered spot zoning, like, Rex, who was here before, said, that's what it is. It may be a business for the last 50 years, but it hasn't been for the last two, since all three buildings have burnt down on there. So there's been no business functioning out there for the last couple of years. There's tons of health issues, environmental issues we can go over with having a factory in the middle of farmland and residential neighborhood. And if we're talking about the zoning the right way, there's farmland all around that is also zoned as residential, not sure why. Should that not be zoned as agriculture? I mean, there's nothing there but farmland. Maybe, I'm not sure that, I guess that's a question for you to answer. And then, so what if I come in 2 years from now and I want to zone some of my land for business? Are we going to do the same thing? So, and hopefully it would go the same way for me, because that is a large possibility. So just keep that in mind if this does get zoned for business, that I may be looking to get zoned for business as well. And if there's a business right next door, I don't see any reason why not. So we went through this. I brought it up before, but I'll just say it. But it's about 10 years ago, Natalie Kahn came and knocked on my grandma's door, which is the house that I currently live in at 1121. She wanted to build a trash compactor next door. She had to get permission from the two conjoining property owners, which was us and Klaus Hart. And we both opposed, and she was not able to do that. It wasn't whether a zoning issue or any of that. It was, I don't know. She had to do that. That was her first step, and she couldn't go no further without that. And I'm not sure what the difference is in this process is another question, I guess. So feel free to answer that when I'm done, but it's just questions I'd like answers to. Yeah. Go back
and ask yourself, do you want a factory next door to your house? So it may be this, it may be that. There's nothing concrete set in place that says that this will only be this amount of this big or this small or this many buildings. What, getting a zone for business in my eyes is you're just opening up the door for endless possibility. You build a building as big as the whole property and take up the whole place. So I like this something set in stone that's not gonna go past this, or this is what it's gonna be, because that hasn't came about. There's nothing that says it's only gonna be this or only gonna be that. It's anywhere from just a retirement plan for Joe, or all the way to moving his complete factory from where it's at to right next door to my house. So, I'd like to see some evidence that it's not gonna go further than that. It wasn't, that's another thing, is what prevents it from being the I-1 like he talked about in the future. So are we just taking steps to get there? You got anybody could drive by there and see it's not a good place for a factory. Yes, it's been businesses. It was a lawn mowing business, McGavick's was there. But not factories. They had flower shop there a long time ago that my grandpa even worked at. It was never a factory. That's a large
All right,
difference.
5 minutes up.
All right.
Okay, so we'll bring it back to discussion with among ourselves. I'll just, if you have a question, raise your hand. I'll call upon you. We'll get some. So it looks like we have no discussion. We're ready to make a motion of some sort. We are a motion to act on this.
Well, I will say that us voting to move it to general business does not ensure a factory. All of the concerns that have been expressed are legitimate concerns, but they're concerns that need to be addressed to the BZA. If Mr. McCoy goes for a special exception, it's not really our purview. So I would stand on what I said before. For over 50 years, it's been used as general business. So to correct the zoning to general business doesn't approve the shoe factory, doesn't approve any other factory. It just allows the continued use that it's had as general business. And there are limitations on what can be general business, which does not include a light manufacturing factory unless there's a special exception that the BZA would approve. So I would move to rezone it to general business.
So we have a motion to approve rezoning. Do we have a second, or we got other discussion?
Hey, Ryan,
Yes.
remind me the NAICS section 3.222.12, that, what did that entail again?
There you go.
Just refresh my memory.
Again.
So it says to facilitate the NAICS section, production and setup box and folding. So what was it? Cause I remember we talked about that.
Are you on the
That
staff
under
report?
that,
It's
wasn't
on the
that,
application.
under that, yeah, it's on the application. Under that, under that section, doesn't it give him the ability to do, or am I did I misunderstand something?
The original application called for I-1.
Oh, is that, okay, so maybe that's.
And the original application talked about having the factory there, but we're not saying that. We're saying general business.
Yeah,
And then requiring him to go to
the BZA.
the BZA for all these other details, which are legitimate concerns. And that's their purview to decide upon.
On his application. Okay.
Yeah, Randy, if you got.
How's the radio station zone?
R1, we just looked at that today, R1, I believe. Or is it down there where Marion starts? Everything surrounding this is R1, other than this property and the American Legion. And they're both zoned ag.
Yes, sir.
This seems like spot zoning to me, and I have a concern, are there any fumes gonna be put out by this factory? All the homeowners are opposed in this neighborhood. This seems like spot
That's the
zoning.
question,
to me.
Mr. McCoy, will there be manufacturing of such that would produce, fumes?
We do not have fumes. And we can bring material safety data sheets to prove that. I'm not prepared to do that this evening because I thought this was just zoning.
Right. Those would be things that would be more prohibitive to the BZA if they were to make conditions. So they may make conditions as far as drainage or what to go there. Falls in that. So we have a motion, we've had some discussion. Do we have a second to advance this?
Second.
Say we do have a second. Any other discussion? One second. Any other discussion? All right, we'll call the roll. This is a vote to rezone the general business.
Atkins,
No,
Bothwell,
no,
Royals,
Yes.
Cottle,
No.
House,
No, none on this one.
Kylie,
Yes.
Hicks,
No.
Hunt,
No.
Knuckles,
Yes.
Todd,
No,
Wright,
No.
three yeses and 8 nos.
That means it does not pass. All right. Okay, we move on to new business. Okay, we have public hearings set up. This is what we continued from basically pushed to this meeting from last meeting. We have public hearings on bed and breakfast, restrictions along streams, and grading permits. These are all individual public hearings. So that would normally follow the same format. Those in favor, those opposed, and back to favor. These were generated out of the office, I do believe, to try to correct, try to correct what we have on the books to match or get in line with what the state requires.
Correct.
Correct? So we will open up the public hearing on the first one with the bed and breakfast. I would think that, since we are initiating this, Brian, if you can give a reason why, and then if there's any other,
Starting off, as far as bed and breakfast goes, definition, the difference between the two, a bed and breakfast is an owner occupied, short-term rental property. An Airbnb is a owner occupied, short-term rental. So that's important to, understand from the get-go. What we ran into is Indiana adopted IC 36-1-24, short-term rentals in 2018, which includes bed and breakfast housing and Airbnb housing, putting our ordinance out of compliance with state code. So what we're noting here is that we need to get back into compliance. We need to address, we have got drastically increased, requests for Airbnbs, especially over in Upland. People wanting to come in and fix up houses and rent them out for Taylor students and parents and so forth. Our current land use table, which I put these in here step by step. Current land use table would allow Bed and breakfast, so again, bed and breakfast is owner occupied. Would allow it by special exception in ag, residential suburban, residential 3, 4, 5. Would allow it by special exception in public, for professional business, and neighborhood convenience, and then by right in local business, central core, and general business. That is our current land use table for the bed and breakfast. Indiana code that came out again in 2018 states that a short-term rental of owner-occupied short-term rental property is a permitted residential use under any applicable zoning ordinance of a unit and may not be disallowed by any zoning ordinance as defined by IC 36-7-1-22 in any zoning district or classification of a unit that permits residential use. So we have it down so that it is not allowed in R1 or R2 and only by special exception. And several of the others, Indiana code says it is allowed by right anywhere a house is.
Without exception, just by right.
Correct. So kind of the same thing. And I've got notes in there as we get along. If we get into the Airbnb land use table, our land use doesn't address an Airbnb. So then we get into the NAICS and break it down. It becomes a sector 72, which says that Airbnbs are not allowed in ag, RS, R1, R2, R3, R4, R5, professional business or neighborhood convenience. Allowed only by special exception in local business and central core in I2 and by right in general business in I1. Underneath that, again, the short-term rental for Airbnbs basically states that a unit may, this applies only to short. A unit may require a special exception, a special use or a zoning variance for short-term rental property that is in a residential zoning district or classification of the unit. However, the unit may not interpret or enforce the unit's zoning regulations or a special exception, special use, or zoning variance in a manner that is intended or has the effect of prohibiting or unreasonably restricting short-term rentals of property to which these sections apply. Denial of a special exception, special use, or zoning variance for a short-term rental property may be appealed according to. So basically, it's telling us that Airbnbs are allowed, again, everywhere a house is allowed, but we can make them a special exception, a special use, or a zoning variance. And that is up to us. So right now, if someone wants to do an Airbnb in an R1 district in Upland, according to our land use tables, they can. According to the Indiana's land use tables, they can by right. Or special exception if we require, or special use, or variance. So I've got it, bringing it to you guys. Here's what we've got. A couple of questions throughout with what you guys want to do with it.
So the rest of this is your recommendation.
So when we get. Yeah, so the next page is what I propose, which includes definitions to go into the area-wide zoning definitions, and then basically taking their code and put it into our ordinance. So if you go back and forth, it's almost word for word. Indiana code becomes Grant County.
Basically, that's what you're doing.
Right.
You're just substituting Indiana.
Correct.
Indiana.
With a couple of questions. So one of the questions with it is permit fees. This says proposed amendment, to charge a permit fee, a unit may charge a permit fee not to exceed $150 for each of the following: the initial permit issued to an owner, or the issuance of a subsequent permit to an owner for the permitted property after the owner's previous permit has been revoked. Unit may not charge permit fee for renewing a permit, including renewal of the permit that has. Oh, got my phone over, expired.
So you can just charge one time and then all renewals are free of charge.
Right. So do you guys, I mean, this, again, this is completely up to you guys. Do you want to charge $20? Do you want to charge $150? That is on the area plan commission to decide. It's a one-time fee. They do have to renew each year, but that'll actually, our new software will send those reminders out for renewal. So that's kind of neat.
What's your recommendation for the fee?
I would, for what it is, I would recommend 150 per property.
It's a one time and never again.
Yeah, so it's a one
You still
time.
gotta maintain it going forward.
What is the maintaining? Is that more money or is that just
Just to be applied.
just paper?
Yeah, their renewal is just a renewal. They'll get online and basically we're still doing it. Here's our contact info.
But now if
Yeah.
ownership changes,
Uh-huh.
if ownership changes, then a new permit fee
Permit
is
would,
required.
because we would want all their information, all their contacts.
Okay, so on the proposed table on the back, bed and breakfast owner occupied, so that'd be like an Airbnb. The X is symbolized what? The X on there tells us that it,
So on our land use table, it would say by right, the bed and breakfast is allowed, everywhere a home is allowed. And an Airbnb would be allowed by special exception everywhere with allowed by right in local business, central core and general business.
so the X is saying they are allowed by right, on the chart,
Right.
okay?
So this would allow an Airbnb to come before us case by case. Or if we want to make it super easy, we can allow it by right. Again, that is up to you guys.
And state statute states.
It is allowed,
We can do it if we have it in ordinance.
yeah, it's,
So you're saying it affects upland the most right now, probably?
right,
Well, I feel like there needs to be restrictions, for sure. I don't feel comfortable with just anybody being able to do their Airbnb next door, you know, and can you imagine living there and your neighbor renting a place out and having new neighbors every day, you know? Not that that's gonna happen that often, but, you know, I think it opens the door to a whole lot. I'd almost like to research this a little bit, to be honest with you. Kind of find out, you know, from other towns, what kind of issues they're having. You know, kind of go from there, from what we can come up with. Maybe we table it for now and come
but again,
around.
this is coming before you because we're already out of.
I was gonna say, correct me if I'm wrong, though. We have two options, either by right or by special exception.
Yeah.
Based upon the state law, correct?
Mr. Happ, if they come right now and say, hey, I'm gonna put an Airbnb in Upland, and I say, no, you can't,
No, I get it.
they've got us.
So.
So
Special exception for zoning variance, which I'm harder to get here.
If by right, do they have to notify us that that is what it is?
it's bed and breakfast, yeah.
And Airbnb, they'd have to let us know that's what they're doing. If we just give them by right. If we charge the fee, actually, then we have a record of it, correct?
You would, well, if we do a special exception, then we come in and get charged a fee.
Okay.
For the
so
special
fee comes with
exception.
the Special exception.
Yeah, if you do it by right, you can just do it.
Bed and breakfast, if I rent out my third bedroom, I'm allowed to do that by right anywhere where.
With no fee or nothing. And that's allowed. We're just saying owner occupied. No,
Is allowed by right.
right. Owner occupied by right. If you're just renting after a whole empty house without you present,
That's.
preferring a special exception, so that's what we're saying.
Right.
Or they just let them do it with no strings attached.
Mr. President,
Yes,
I think we're doing this as a public hearing.
Yeah. we need to get go over.
We ought to hear the other and
Yeah, we're gonna
then
get,
have this discussion at the close of
we're gonna get
the
there.
public hearing.
All right, so any other, let's see. Anybody opposed or negative comments or opposed to making adjustments? Seeing none, so now we're closed the public hearing. Any other further discussion?
Just one point. I thought I heard you say that regardless of whether it's a B and B or an Airbnb, either one has to apply and pay $150.
Just the Airbnb.
Airbnb would be non-occupied.
No, owner occupied.
This says proposed amendment to area plan fee schedule. Bed and breakfast, owner occupied and non-owner occupied, 150.
So that's expected.
It should be just the Airbnb.
So what specifically you're asking for? What's your recommendation on it?
Just a discussion on, you know,
Just your recommendation, Mr.
my proposal with your correction. With your guys' tweaks, basically. Question mark on how much, I would say 150, unless you guys,
And what else then?
it's, the rest of it, I
150 and what? I mean,
mean, the rest of it is basically code.
just to go with
Indiana code.
Indiana code concerning this with a fee of $150.
Yep.
So if there's any other kind of discussion.
I guess the only other question you'd have is you have two options, special exception or zoning variance, which do you
Well,
want?
yeah,
Yeah.
So do we need to add that? What's your recommendation there?
I would say special exception and take it on a case by case. That protects us from what, like Mr. Howard was talking about. We get, they call in and ask us about it. And we want to put a bed and breakfast in, what do we need to do? And we're looking into book, trying to figure out if they can do it or not do it. What's in code that allows them to do what? This just gives us a, here it is.
Now, this being a public hearing, we're just making a recommendation up to the county commissioners and then it'll go to the town.
Right.
So they will have, generally will adopt it. If they don't agree to it, then that portion of
It would not apply to that.
the jurisdiction.
Right.
Would be, so we're basically making a motion to make a favorable recommendation with whatever changes we make. Any other discussion? And then we can review what we talked about. The fees to be $150 one time. Not that it's going for, they have to apply for a fee for Airbnb, which is non-resident.
Non-owner occupied.
Right. And then there was one, special exceptions. They all be done by special exceptions.
150 and follow Indiana code.
Right, correct.
That's it.
Yeah, basically.
I so moved.
I'll second. Bob and Bob made the first and second. There you go. So we'll call the roll.
They're gonna charge us $150 now, aren't they?
Yes.
Boswell,
Yes.
Royals,
Yes.
Kyle,
Yes.
House,
Yes.
Kylie,
Yes.
Hicks,
Yes.
Hunt,
Yes.
Knuckles,
Yes.
Todd,
Yes.
Wright.
Yes.
All right. Now we move on to the next public hearing, restrictions along streams. That's the next page is in your packet. Once again, this is a public hearing. Brian, since it's initiated by the office here, to give us the lowdown, and then we'll have any comments on the president or.
This, I'm bringing to you, setting through the drainage board. One of the issues that we have is our code conflicts with the drainage code of Indiana. Our code basically states that no structure other than a fence shall or may be erected within 75 feet of the meander or high water line of any county maintained ditch, stream, or other water body. Indiana code for drainage code basically says that no permanent structures may be located within 75 feet. We just had an issue here a couple of months back where we had to go in and tear some fences out. So according to our ordinance, fences are allowed. According to the drainage laws, they are not allowed, and that the drainage board has a right to go in and rip them out if they want. So we were in conflict in that way. What I propose is that we take the drainage laws and incorporate them into our ordinance. And I've let Jim and Raymond and Surveyor Drainage Board, take a look at these two and give input on it. This would basically say that no permanent structure may be erected within the 75-foot right of way of any county ditch, stream or other water body without written consent of the drainage board, and also give the code that goes with that. This matches the drainage codes, the Indiana drainage codes. My hope is another thing that we are looking at that's coming up, we're gonna talk grading permits. We're also looking into 1 acre pond, ordinance. Also looking into, floodplain management, is trying to get everything that goes with floodplain and water all together too. So we looked at one, which had us look at another, which had us look at another. So that's kind of what these will lead up to the pond.
Okay.
Later on.
That's it, and just, any other comments from the audience opposing changing the ordinance? Line up with state guidelines. All right, seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. Any discussion?
Mr. Todd, tell us about it. What do you think of this?
What needs to be added, it's been in the Indiana Drainage Code since 1965. We have 747 miles easement drains. You can put a fence up with proper 70 some hour notice. The fence has to come down. It's at the liability of the owners. And, we want to keep an easement so we can either dredge or work on that tile.
Right.
And it needed added to yours so people know about it.
Right. So you make a recommendation that we approve this?
Yes.
So we have a motion to accept the changes to the restrictions along streams. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Mr. Atkins? Oh, you gotta get quicker, man. Maybe. Do we have a motion and a second to make a favorable recommendation to make the change wordings into the restrictions along streams? Call the roll.
Atkins,
Yes.
Boswell,
Yes.
Royals,
Yes.
Cottle,
Yes.
Couse,
Yes.
Hiley,
Yes.
Hicks,
Yes.
Hunt,
Yes.
Knuckles,
Yes.
Todd,
Yes.
Wright.
Yes. All right. Now we'll move on to our third hearing. This is, docket 03EA-23, on a grading permits. Right, we're gonna do the same format. We'll just get our play and then we'll have a.
Okay, with the grading permit, again, we began and started off with looking at ponds that are being put in. We've had a couple issues with ponds going in with the way our code currently reads, if you're 1 acre or less, we don't require permits. Drainage board doesn't require permits, health department doesn't require. So if you're 1 acre or less, no one looks at it. So in getting into our grading permit is there for anything that is 1 acre or more. That we would move 1 acre or more of land. The way our grading permit reads, application for a grading permit shall be made to the area plan office. Certification of erosion control performance is required. And that's all that section says. Through that, the thing it doesn't note is it is 1 acre or more of land. 1 acre or more of land where they talk about the certified erosion control, that is actually the Rule 5 that has to go through the USDA Soil and Water to get approval prior to it coming to us for a grading permit. Again, our ordinance doesn't say any of this. It just says you got to come to us with a permit, basically. It doesn't give us guidelines that once they do that, thanks for the money, but there's nothing following that says, here's what they've got to do. The other thing I noted, there are 0 guidelines. With our grading permits, they are located at 3 different spots within the ordinance. So you have your grading permit followed by your permit sequence. And then, but prior to that, 4 sections prior to that was your grading permit exemptions. And then 7 to back all the way to 82 is your grading permit expiration. So we've got it in 3 different spots also. So, my goal was to actually on this, and this is what we talked about with the health department and surveyors drainage board again. Once they go and get the Rule 5 and get the erosion control, they are to come in to us to get the permits for it. What we want to see is the site plan. That is our big. What is on that property? Are there regulated drains on that property? Are there septic on that property? Any wells? We want to know where everything is located before we start digging into it. And right now, we're not doing any of that. So they come in, here's the permit, and we never go look at anything. The drainage board, unless they hit something, doesn't go look at anything. Health department, the same thing. So again, this is just to put some guidelines to the grading permits. You'll notice permit requirements start right off with site plans. Now, if they're going Rule 5 and going through the USDA, we should get a lot of that. So it should be pretty simple, but at least we've got the plans here. Right now, when I talk to Butch Embry out there and say, hey, Butch, when they get the Rule 5, it's got to come to us. It's since when? It's like, well, this code's been in effect since 2014. They weren't aware that anything had to come to us following it. So again, it's trying to work with them too, plus to actually put guidelines together.
All right, now open to the general audience. Anybody want to speak not to change our current rules? Okay, seeing none, public hearing is closed. Discussion among the group.
Your purview.
I think it's a good idea.
Okay. So
Jim
basically,
always gives me so much.
so they gotta get a Rule 5, then they come in and, so we're talking anything over an acre, so potentially bigger development than just putting a house on a small lot.
Right now, good examples would be Van Buren Legion.
Mhm.
They're clearing out there. We've got Sports Lake over by Walnut
Mhm.
Golf Course. They cleared out another like 4 or 5 acres. And Aaron happened to drive by and said, what's going on over there? So anytime they get into that, they're supposed to be getting to us.
They want to make a motion for payroll recommendation? We got a second. And a second, right here. Of course. Call the roll when you're ready. Ready?
Atkins,
Yes.
Boswell,
Yes.
Royals,
Yes.
Cottle,
Yes.
House.
Yes.
Hiley,
Yes.
Hicks,
Yes.
Hunt,
Yes.
Knuckles,
Yes.
Todd,
Yes.
Wright.
Yes.
All right, moving on. 5.2 is discussion on attorneys. So I would like to go and get this documented into the minutes of the meeting. Back on February the 22nd at 5 o'clock in this room, we did have an executive board meeting that was open to the public, advertised for discussion on hiring of an attorney process be discussed. Talked about comprehensive plan and options on that, and then rules of procedures. Those were 3 topics that we discussed. Should note the members that were present. There's Steve Wright, Frank Hicks, Randy Atkins, Brian Hunt, myself. Also present was Ryan Malott. Those were the people. So within that, we can discuss, we did discuss about hiring an attorney. The consensus was, we basically reviewed the, job description. We did get that authorized to be posted out there, so we get resumes in. Also within that, we gave a timeline that we want to have that back in by, is that next Monday deadline?
13.
I think so, and then potentially line up interviews the following week. And those interviews would be done in executive session with the whole commission available to show up and listen and question, along with the BZA members. So once we get applications, I'm not sure if we've gotten any turned in yet. I know it's out there. And I think it's Monday, we put this coming next Monday. And then once we have applications in, then we would line up to do interviews with.
Kyle helped us, and we got with, Mr. Beats, who put it out.
Yeah, it was sent to every member of the Grant County Bar Association.
Post on Indeed or however else that
And we
do
got
our normal advertising. So hopefully we do have some selection or people that apply. And then we will, depending on the numbers, we will set up interviews, whether it be the following Monday, I think is what we were shooting for. Open to every member to come, have the opportunity to come and listen and talk. The 13th is the deadline for turning in, right? So it'd be the following Monday. Is what we're shooting for, but we gotta,
The 20th would be the following Monday.
right, provided that we have some selections to interviews. So that is the game plan. That's basically, I think, the way we had talked about that. Yes, Randy, any other comments on that? I think that's what we're talking.
Yeah, I'd like to ask Kyle, because these interviews are of a personnel matter, is that what qualifies that for an executive session versus a public session?
Correct, yep, correct.
Okay.
So that's the game plan on that. We did talk about,
We have someone with their hand up in the back.
oh, yes,
Yeah, I have a question on that. And like to get your take on this. And IC code 5-14-3-3. Interviews of prospective appointees must be conducted at a meeting that is open to the public. This is an appointment, correct? It's not an employee.
Well, I think that would be an appointee to the board. I mean, you could do it in public. It's not an employee.
So I was just questioning if we're doing it right. You know, if we're doing it in the correct way. I mean, I can give you this excerpt from code here. Let's get your opinion.
the game, my opinion is anytime you're interviewing, we're not making a decision at that meeting. That will come before an open meeting to make a recommendation on who we would hire. I don't think it would be right, and the reason why I do exactly is, if you have an attorney or whoever you're talking to in a public meeting, and their current employers here for any type of job, that somebody wanting to leave my employment.
This list you have, Ed, what you pointed out is in section 10 as a prospective appointee, which is that in the section considering the appointment of a public official. So what you can do, develop a list, consider, make initial exclusion, but then when you get to 3, you have to do in public. That would not apply. That just applies when you're appointing to the board or official, which you highlighted on section 10. So that would not apply to what you're doing here.
So that is our game plan. As soon as we get a list of candidates and we get a room, hopefully this room will be available. I'm not sure if it's available on that, hopefully it is, or what have you. Because it'd be kind of hard to get upstairs somewhere. And then how many, and we'll get time slots and things like that.
I'm concerned about the timeline.
Yes.
At this point, we have no one.
Zero apps.
There are no applications at this point. You're gonna close it next Monday.
Well, we'll have to make adjustments if we have nothing. I would hope
We
to
have
get
nothing.
something.
Should there not be enough time to get a minimum number? We ought to have three, or are we just going to have one?
Well,
Say, hey, you're it, you're the only one that came, so you get
well,
one.
I think
I think we need to be concerned about that.
I understand your concern, but if that one person comes in and they're not a fit, then I would say we would continue on looking.
Your point's well taken, but I think the executive committee could extend that date for taking if they did not.
If we don't have anybody, we're gonna have to make some adjustments.
We also discussed pay, and I've got emails out to 16 different counties right now on what they're paying their attorneys.
Ours is too low.
Trying to get involved.
Yeah, see if because that may be an issue. We may have some that, well, I can't do it for that, but what about this? Then we would have to go back to that county council or an adjustment to that.
And so we are in our recruiting. It's
Basically,
all been turned over to,
well, the job description, yeah, executive committee was sent out or directed to have the information sent out. I think Justin's probably, is he involved collecting or is they going from?
Justin's got it, and like I said, they got it out to the Green County.
Does we
we
get
got it out. Are we limiting ourselves to?
Not really.
I don't, we wouldn't need to if we went through Indeed, but again, how many our thought process was how many are we gonna get from out of town for 12 months?
You know,
But
we
it
have
is
to look at
listed
it.
on
But-
Indeed, which
might
would
be an issue, but I'm thinking you might get someone from
close by.
Delaware County or, a surrounding county,
Right.
which wouldn't, they wouldn't find it be so difficult to be here. I don't suppose we need to limit ourselves. So why I'm asking about the recruiting is there not a regional group that we could send this to, or at least the adjoining counties? Get that done? Okay.
Just a point, I know their office uses attorneys quite often. I think that was the reason for just this county, to start out with, just to see if we had any takers. I agree with you, Mr. Bothwell, that we probably should go out farther if we don't get anybody here. But I think to have a local person dealing with, they know the town, they know the people, they know, I think it would behoove us to check that out first and then reach out, if that's.
Well, I don't disagree with looking here in Grant County, but I think it should not be limited to Grant County.
The word is
I
out
would
there.
ask that we include it to at least our adjacent counties. I don't see any reason why we would limit ourselves to it.
Randy, you had time?
Yeah, the other discussion that we had at the executive committee was for Ryan to consider the budget that he has and see if there's any excess that he may have at the end of the year that we could throw towards some legal counsel.
Right. Yeah, yeah. Was there somebody over here? No, okay. So we're proceeding on that. We did talk about the comprehensive plan, the need to get it done. The fact that we probably can't handle it in-house. I think we talked about that here. So Ryan is in the process of contacting neighboring counties to find out what they did and their prices.
Mr. Hiley came in almost the entire day Monday and made phone calls. Basically saved me a day of work. So he did a heck of a job. And that's what we asked.
Okay, so we are getting compiled information on that. Thank you, Rob. There is also other entities within the county that is doing similar things or may be able to piggyback on. The Growth Council, I believe, is one that's interested in while they're developing a plan. So maybe want to duplicate, maybe work together. And then the Community Foundation, they have a great resource with potential could help maybe do some funding too, but they have connections So we are contacting some of them too, to see just exactly what direction we need to go, but this is the second most important. We're gonna be dealing with, rules and procedures, and then we get into area for the comprehensive plan. So we're still formulating the direction we need to go and. Yes,
And just to share with the group, watching the commissioners meeting this morning, I saw that, the East Central Indiana Regional Planning Group, was there for other purposes. So I had suggested to Mr. Wright that he have conversations with them, because when you look at their website, virtually everything that's included in a comprehensive plan is something that they sometimes get involved with, including consulting. Don't know if that works or not, but you're gonna explore that with them.
Yeah, I did lunch with the gentleman, and, it sounds like they can help us. I don't know to what degree.
Right.
And, but also could possibly find us funding for that as well as far as grants. So we're working on that. Appreciate it, Mr. Riley. Shoot me a text real quick and let me know.
you got him before I left the building.
I did. Well, he left the building.
Okay. So that's that. And then rules and procedures, I know we discussed that. Did ask Ryan to get with, Mr. Boswell, we got the copy of the stuff he was working on. Ryan, you've been making some, so we actually need to mesh them together to.
I think we need to get some clarification on that.
On.
I didn't know what it was that was being requested.
Oh,
I got a email.
right.
Ryan at 9:24. And, and at 9:27, 3 minutes later, Mr. Persinger responded for me.
That,
I guess, I don't know, we didn't talk about that. This point forward, Kyle, if you're gonna speak for me, let me know ahead of time.
Well, I had the information, I thought so.
I had gone to Mr. Persinger, as you would recall, when you came in as president 3 years ago, 4 years ago.
right.
I had some concerns about things with the CABO, all those kinds of things that we needed to be looking at. I took that to Mr. Persinger and we talked about that at that time. I've been in a couple of times since. Anyway, I think that's what he has.
Right, that's
The
what
only thing I think that he would know, but we have a committee that you set up. Mrs. Jones is here. She was part of that committee. And anyway, we have worked for months.
Right.
And have this thing ready to present to you guys as of 6 or 7 months ago.
Well, that's what we were after.
Just never got, so I don't know if that's what you want, or if it's what Kyle thought that you wanted, and you sent it to Ryan, I believe, right?
Yeah, the one I sent was the one exactly what you said, Bob, like
Yeah.
3 years ago.
3 years ago.
Yeah.
And that's
So we
not
had
what
something-
we've been working.
Okay, so you got something more updated than that.
Oh, yeah.
Well, then we need to get that so that we need that. That's what we need so that we get to the vendors.
I needed to know that. In fact, I sent that back.
That's what-
Message back. I don't know if Kyle got it. Ryan got it, I'm sure.
So you can get that to
I
Ron.
sent it back to the office.
I got it on my phone, I'm sure too.
You can get that to them so they can get it out to us.
We actually, I think, our understanding was we were to, make the report for action. You gave us that task. We have completed that. Took months, actually.
Right.
Working on that. So I'm not sure that, what are you suggesting? Are you suggesting that what we did is,
I don't know. I've not seen it. So we just need to get it so that we can act on it if that's what we need to do.
that's what I'm thinking we need to do, but that doesn't, I'm not understanding what you're talking about, other than what I think is going on, which is you take this work and Ryan already has some ideas in mind about what he wants to add to the rest. I think it's our job to write our rules and regulations. Okay,
I agree.
okay, so, our understanding and the work that we're gonna do, be happy to present that to you guys. Then if you don't want to do them, or you're gonna throw it out, or you wanna have additions or whatever, that would be fine.
You can get those to Ryan, so you can get it out to us so that we can review and then, just need to make, I noticed there's a lot of writing on there relating to code, as long as everything is proper and matches up to code,
That's all
then we
3
should be
years
good.
ago stuff.
Okay,
And Dr. Buffalo, it wasn't stepping on toes. The IPA calls for the rules and procedures to be about a 2-month process. And after a year, I just started working on it.
The other case, we've had it done, we ready to present for, I don't know, how long, Lois?
okay, well, we're trying to move on. Here and there, what, we just need to get it accomplished.
It's been accomplished.
Okay, so if we can get that to Ryan so he can make copies and get it out to us so that maybe we can review whether we can get it addressed in the next meeting. Maybe we can review it and have questions and concerns and go from there.
And the other thing, I need to start comparing it to our ordinance. So that our rules match our ordinance, match Indiana code.
We'll present it to you
Okay.
at your next meeting
Okay,
with what you want to do.
all right, so those were the topics, and then we went into executive session to discuss employee matters. So we can't talk about that in a public meeting. If we do interviews, or when we get into interviews, if there's time afterwards, and maybe we can discuss employee matters after that, since it'd be an executive session. So that's where I think that might be the opportune time to discuss what we discussed. All right, we'll get back to the agenda.
Chuck, the only thing I
Yes,
want
sir.
to, one concern I have as being a member of the executive committee is I'm not sure that I totally understand what qualifies the executive committee to address. I know that in a matter of urgency, when something has to be, a decision has to be made quickly before we can pull the whole group together, that would qualify. But then we get into, okay, what about other things? And I want to make sure that this board is okay with whatever it is that the executive committee addresses. And I don't know how to make, bring you guys into that. You just want to trust us to deal with whatever it is that comes up on an agenda? You want to pre-approve before we go into an executive committee meeting?
Well,
Rob,
so in my opinion, there are some guidelines that govern that, and we can get those out and make those clear that these are the specifics and these aren't, which would be helpful. But also, I mean, we voted to put you into those positions for that purpose. So I would hope in good faith that you guys would act in good faith, obviously, and do the right things in that role with those responsibilities. But if we need better clarification, I'm sure Kyle can provide that these are the specific instances usually in which this encompasses.
Well, it's been rare. It's a unique statute for their plan commission to have an executive committee. And, I mean, we had that discussion, any committee of a public body is subject to the open door law. So that's, the discussion Chuck and I had. It hasn't been used in, I don't know how long. I mean, it was used because you guys discussed it. Hey, why don't you guys go discuss these things? I mean, that was at the last meeting. I think my theory, I don't know how long it's been in state code. I think it's kind of been there to do like quick decisions, but I mean, the public access code probably came after this. Because it's very unique to have any committee set up by state code. So, I mean, I think the parameters there, it's very broad. If there's one dissenting vote, if there's a vote, then it goes to the entire board. So, I mean, you guys can use it at your discretion, but I mean, it's been very rare. You still need 48 hours to call a meeting, you're right. I mean, but you can call a meeting of the entire board if you want. So, I mean.
so like that meeting, the first meeting was open to the public. Anybody could have came. It was more of a planning and directional type thing. Gather, rather than taking time here to get all the nuts and bolts, try to get some things, once they solidify, but maybe a direction and then bring it back to the whole council.
If you guys want to put more limits, it says you may have an executive committee. I mean, you guys could vote to say we're not going to have an executive committee. If you want to more define what the executive committee can and cannot do, you guys can do that. Set those, more specific guidelines, what you can and can't do. I mean, in the rules now, it just talks about continuances, but I'm thinking that's probably predates even before the, you know, public access code, just, but I mean, there's no, I don't think there's any limiting or anything what you have. I mean, and I don't know how, Bob, you would probably know how long it's been used with your experience on the board. I mean, how often it's used. I know it hasn't been used since, that's the first time since I've been here, just 2 years. But
We used it back when I was president, maybe 2 or 3 times just to make sure that we had something coming up and we needed to sit and talk about it before our next meeting, kind of an emergency kind of thing. That's when it was done. Following my presidency, Chuck became president, and I was a part of the executive committee for at least one of those years. But to my knowledge, during the time of your first presidency, we never met, we never had an executive committee meeting at all, which makes it kind of strange that suddenly, you know, we have had, you know, some controversy here among ourselves and, you know, we argue back and forth and all that. But suddenly now we seem to be all in on having the executive committee meet and going to discuss, you know, how we are going to do things as a board. And many of those things are not emergency kinds of things. For example, what's being discussed here with the hiring process for the attorneys, but we somewhere down the road and all that kind of thing. The concern that I would have is that I do not want the executive committee, a small group of us, deciding and trying to make decisions for our entire group and come back and indicate that, well, we discussed that and this is the way it is. That is the impression that I'm getting. I don't know why, when it was not necessary over 2.5 years to ever have an executive committee meeting. And now suddenly we have one there, and we're going to use that small committee to start giving direction for the entire board. And or we have to come back and, you know, embarrass ourselves here like I am now to discuss this stuff. Politics have got to quit. We got to be open.
did you have it?
The only thing I wanted to bring up was the personnel side.
Pardon?
The personnel side where we were dealing with an employee.
Right.
Issue. That was, to me, that's an executive, and that was in.
Station thing.
Yes, and, you know, it's more or less for the employee, for the family, for whatever, you know, I mean, it's just one of those things that, to do that in a public setting, you can't quite be, right? I mean, probably the school system, you guys had the same type of thing, right?
For years.
Okay,
That's what the executive session
Yeah.
was saying.
and that's what was discussed, within that executive session. True.
Yeah, I'm
But that should be
I'm honored to be a member, and it was a very good meeting.
It was.
But I just want to make sure that everybody's on board before, you know, the 5 or 6 of us or however many are there are making decisions, because I don't, you know.
I don't think it was a decision.
Okay,
I think it was just, I think it was discussion. There was no decisions made on anything.
Right,
There was
that's
no
right.
vote, there was no, all we were trying to do is figure out the best way that we could possibly
That's correct.
represent the whole board. And again, I think that's, you know, you bring up a good point, you know, in good faith. I think we got a great balance on that board that is taking a look at every different way, and it was a great meeting, I thought.
There are guidelines as to what we can take and
That's correct.
take to it. So
But
I
there
mean,
is concern. I think I heard Ryan 2 or 3 meetings ago indicate that the executive committee could actually take action on behalf of the entire board. Is that correct? In some circumstances? That I'm very concerned about.
And I
Well,
would
state
be
code
as
does
well.
allow that. But it does say if there's, state code does allow that, if it's an urgency. But it also clarifies that if there's
one dissenting vote, that dissenting vote may request that it go to the full council. So I mean, I hear what you're saying and I understand it. I guess I had assumed, based on kind of everything here, that the executive committee would be kind of a planning group that would bring recommendations to the bigger body, for the bigger body to discuss it and make final decisions, with the exception if there's something deadly urgent, which is going to be few and far between.
If that's everybody's understanding, I'm good with it.
Brian,
So
you got
that actual code, Indiana code says that the majority of the executive committee may act in the name of the commission. But if there are any dissenting votes, the person voting in the minority may appeal the decision of the executive committee to the commission for Indiana code 36-7-4-408. Next section says the executive committee may not decide matters requiring a public hearing or a majority vote of all the members of the commission. It is limited to only.
So recommendations to the bigger body.
I'm good with it. Sorry to take the time. I just wanted to clarify.
No, good clarification.
Okay.
Get it open.
All right.
We're not gonna be dictated to.
So we discussed the attorney issues, rules and procedures. We want to do the amendment to the rules and procedures on how we elect and process. That is in our packet somewhere. Just wanna back through here and find it. I think there's some, did we see that in here?
Yeah, I think I had it two months ago. It's not in here.
Not in there, so we'll bring it back next week, we can see the
Yeah.
proper writing. Basically, it brings us in the eliminating the ballot type thing.
What I'd like to see us do is instead of the paper ballot.
Right, yeah, that was-
The major change was, if only one member is nominated, election may compromise with standard vote. However, if more than one individual has been nominated, each member shall choose one candidate by paper ballot.
That's not what we want. So why don't we just bring that back next week? Or next
So this-
meeting?
I would say we replace that with election shall be compromised by a standard roll call vote. Members may be present or participate through electronic communications. Member participating through electronic communications must be seen and heard per electronic meeting policy or IC 5-14 the other one was just if for any reason such as a tie, the election cannot be completed, the current chairman will remain in place, chairman or president, until the issue can be resolved. So that kind of takes care of two things that we just had with this year's election.
We're trying to do it tonight or wait.
In sync with Indiana code.
State code.
When you,
Well, there is no code for the election process in Indiana code.
nothing in the Indiana.
It's that we have the first of the year, we got to do elections.
Kyle, you okay with that?
That's all said.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on, how much you want, but I mean, that's all accurate for state law.
Is that line with the
We just That's what I'm trying to get at. What?
Yeah,
is-
I mean, what the state law is, you can't do a paper ballot, you can't vote in secret. So that's what that's eliminating, and it's going a little further.
This
We were gonna do it at
first time.
I think we had it on there for last month, and it was one of the table things. I've got it right here, it's just not on the back.
Raymond, do you want to make the motion and just take care of it tonight, or you want to bring it
You
back?
didn't know that you were wrong in advising us about the paper ballot when we did that.
When we first did it, I said roll call right off the bat, and then I talked myself out of it, reading the ordinance. So that's what I wanted to get in.
The BZA just dealt with that, and I just wanted to know how that aligns with what the BZA just approved.
I think the BZA struck out the addition of the electronic voting. It's not necessary because that's state law, and you guys have already adopted a resolution regarding electronic voting, because the only way electronic voting is allowed, you have to adopt a resolution, which you've done, and so you could, the BZA did not have that sentence in there. They just struck out Because of the paper ballot for roll call.
And I put it in because I thought that's gonna be the first question we get. Did I do that?
But if that's procedure, I mean, because we passed the ordinance, whatever, to allow it on all votes. You have to be able to be present and heard or seen and heard.
Right.
So it would probably be no different for that particular roll call vote. So do we want to deal with it tonight?
I get something done here, people.
Let's do, well, we've got 3 things done, we'll get a 4th thing done then. Perfect.
So move.
So you want to, okay, so Randy makes a motion, Mr. Wright seconds motion to adjust the election procedures, correcting the wording on the paper ballot, eliminating that.
To bring in
Compliance with state code.
Yeah.
Any other discussion?
Call the roll, please.
Atkins.
Yes.
Bothwell,
Yes.
Royals,
Yes.
Cottle,
Yes.
House,
Yes.
Wiley,
Yes.
Hicks,
Yes.
Hunt,
Yes.
Knuckles,
Yes.
Todd,
Yes.
Wright.
Yes.
Okay, committee reports. Kyle, you have anything for us?
No.
Ryan, you got anything? Would you get your report out? I saw that in the email. I'll print it out.
The director's reports out. If you guys got any questions, I'll answer them. One thing I did want to address, just to make sure I touch base with you guys, I know I emailed everyone. Grace did give her 2 weeks notice. We've been trying for 2 years to try to get her to full-time. She's gonna be leaving us for full-time, so. Right now, we've got with Justin to start getting applications, the application process started. So, I ask you guys, do you want me to wait a month before I hire a permits clerk, or can I get through the process and hire one?
So yes, this was a point of contention in the past as far as do we let Ryan see the office manager, executive director, and employees under him? How much do we want to have involvement in either interviewing or final approval, or just to present before it's hired or present after it's hired? Or he has direction?
I make a motion, we let Ryan do it and then present it after he's hired.
Yeah.
One second, you gotta let him run his office.
Okay, so we have a motion, a second, to let Ryan, interview, make the selection, just bring it back to us when the process is done, basically.
After he's hired.
After hired, right?
Is that the only
We might want to
adding the
reconsider,
position or something?
we might want to reconsider that because we might put ourselves into a position where he hires somebody. Technically, we still have to approve it, and then that creates an issue where we got to retroactively hire. So really, he should give us bring somebody to us.
Why do we have to approve it?
Because we had this happen before.
That's in state law. It's a recommendation. You guys, Ryan can recommend.
Right.
It just has to be approved by the commission.
Okay. Or if not, technically, they can't be paid and we have to retroactively.
So he still interviews somebody,
Right.
picks somebody.
Right, brings the name to you guys for final. He makes a recommendation of who it is. And then you guys.
we can call a quick meeting. Don't
Yeah,
question.
I'd appreciate that, because with our other position, I mean, that takes us down to 4
Okay,
people total.
so try to have, you find a good candidate before the next meeting. Would be agreed.
We're looking, we got, real quick, we got a bunch of applications, but, just a lot of work a month or two and leave, work a month or two.
Yeah, we're not, yeah, that's tough building, part-time positions. All right. Anything to go to the back, we're not gonna deal with text amendment, otherwise, that was in our packet.
Yeah, we need to vote on that.
Oh, wait, no, guys, we did have a motion in a second, don't we?
Well, we need
And
to,
then we need to adjust it.
yes,
We need to adjust the amendment, or the
motion.
motion, yes. So you can bring a recommendation. That adjusted. Okay, the motion's been adjusted, it brings, bring out
Bring a person.
person or final approval. Or approval.
When we were meeting the 20th. We were gonna meet.
That-
Weren't we?
That was gonna be executive session for interviews. If you have somebody available, we can always have a public hearing also.
Call a
Before
special
that.
meeting.
You don't have to have a public hearing to hire. You guys just didn't need to do it.
Well, it is an employee matter, executive session, that probably could work with.
That's what I'm saying.
The final decision, you need to do it in public session when you, the recommendation to employ them. If you're going to interview them, you can do it in private, but I mean, to confirm employment has to be in public.
Okay. So if you have somebody before then that's ready to go, we can, as long as 48 hours before, we can do it a quick and public hearing, a public meeting before that, or right after. All right, any other, so we're ready for the roll call.
Atkins,
Yes.
Bothwell,
Abstain.
Royals,
Yes.
Cottle,
Yes.
House,
Yes.
Kylie,
Yes.
Hicks,
Yes.
Hunt,
Yes.
Knuckles,
Yes.
Todd,
Yes.
Wright.
Yes.
Okay, on the back of the agenda, we're talking about BCA tax amendment. Those are things that we need to look over, Ryan. We're not dealing with that tonight. We need to look over them.
And the BCA is going to also,
What's that?
BCA is also.
Reviewing them.
You want to issue that copy that the BZA just gave you then? What we just approved and this,
This would be for the actual ordinance, not the rule.
I,
Yes,
just a
correct.
point, Mr. Hartman did an excellent job, going page by page. I would recommend that we kind of do that as well, kind of follow suit. They, with the changes that they were taking a look at. he was
On their
going
white
page by-
zoning?
Yes,
Okay.
thought that was a great way to do it, because it's pretty deep.
Right.
I mean, if you've taken the time to look through this, I mean, it is deep, and you're trying to kind of keep up with everything, and I think that would be a great way to walk through it as a group, to make sure
Do a
that we
couple,
did it right.
a page or two a meeting, so we get a group.
I thought it was great.
All right. I have no other business. Anybody else? Okay, so our next public meeting is April 3rd. I say we hopefully will have some applications, so we do an executive session for interviewing on the 20th, I think it is. If need be, we'll call a special meeting for hiring potentially between then and there. Tyson, are you going to be available to be at the next meeting? Because I am out of town.
the April 3rd meeting.
April 3rd. I will be in Arizona. I probably won't be able to be.
What, you know, they had a Monday?
Yeah, Monday. Regular Monday.
I don't see one.
Okay, just to give you a heads up.
So just an FYI, I will also be out of state for the next monthly meeting that I will try to participate if I can get Wi-Fi.
Any other business? I'll take the motion to adjourn.
Take any public.
Oh, that is true, that. Public input.
Don't have to.
Public input. Right, T?
I'll be brief.
Okay,
When you take up the comprehensive plan,
yes.
there is from the APA guidelines, consider significant public participation in that process. And a committee from the public will make recommendations and help with that process. Because the comprehensive plan, that's something you're planning 20 years out. It's used a lot of expertise in that area. So anyway.
Yep, I think that was we did talk a little bit about that, on town, governments, boards, school, all kinds.
Who do you submit applications to for an attorney?
They turn it in to Justin, is that where this coming back to Justin? All right, other comments? Yes.
I noticed that recently we've had sheriff's deputies at our meetings. I know we see them meeting at commissioners' meetings and so on. Are we inviting them here, asking them to be here, or are they just here on their own or what? I know we've done that when we've had very controversial.
Yeah, we had a possible controversial, public hearing.
With the BZA. And so they're here for what purpose? To control the crowd, control us.
And I asked them if you have someone here because we didn't know what was going on with the BZA.
Okay. Well, we've had that. I've noticed they've been here. I've
I
never
think Dell came last time.
We had the sheriff here at our meeting. We had the sheriff here at our meeting.
Yeah, Dell's been going around.
I did that a couple of times back when we had the catering thing going on. That's what I'm saying. Only one.
Right.
This is getting to be kind of a regular situation. That's why everybody knows.
No further business.
I may be.
I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Thank you guys for coming.
So moved. All in favor? Aye. Fine.
That's your archive.
Not yet. But I have about one. Yeah, and then we had to test the second one. Second floor. So, waiting for results on the second floor and then ready to go. I just talked to, I asked about shutting down that assigned right. I usually send out an email saying from the beginning of this date at this time.
Well, I'm sure nobody looked at it.
Oh, no, half the neighbors already came by and told me, nice. We had one lady who was thinking that moving society that is demolishing it.
I wonder how far they are behind.
That's new Saturday on the second floor with testing on the inside. On the second floor. So we make sure there's no fires.
Yeah.
What's that in?
Yeah, right.
I'll keep you guys updated as soon as I know. You see down on the front things. There's a few other things that I've seen might be contributed to the section, but I have them already, so I just have to watch it.
So what do you need, anything else? Put the dumpster in the middle of the road right there.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it's just gonna be right in front, and it's on top of that. Yeah. Like,
You're that far as I know, or?
yeah, it's right, right. No, I guess what they want to do is get rid of, but I'll keep you updated.
All right.
I'm getting.
That's an appointment of a public official. It's like the public body appoints school.
I was trying to decide, but I figured.
Right. I would say the term, fire, yeah. You're playing probably a public official. Or the APC. Public official is. I mean, you know, like the APC. When I was. Most people are kind of like city council. Like school board, nonpartisan, would have an autonomy. By this statute, you can interview. They're all. You guys don't want to later. So, I mean, I would consider. You can do it in private, you can do it in public.
I wouldn't feel racist.
He ran.
Yes, he ran. No car that full tire.
He's doing it out of courtesy. I talked to Kyle. I think you stay around this. We didn't think you could do
You don't want to.
We can't pay it.
You need to show up and.
Should be around this.
Yeah.
Hopefully they will be around.
He called me.
I mean.
Where I
She's a so person. He wants to have any. Yeah. She was afraid.
We can bring some of that. We can bring some of that.
That's why I was trying to get.
I sprayed it here. I'm going to try to be.
Hear nothing to say.
Make sure everything is. So you guys like, why should it not? That's why I brought that up.
We've got the somebody that.
Oh, yeah. We've got it passed.
It's a big sign over there.
Take my way. Drainage, I put them right beside you.
It's coming, get in.
Ask
Well, there.
It's not.
Oh, yeah.
I got two products right here. He said you got to have representation. One the state.
I said, that's why. Get in here. We'll stuff.
Is going on.
And I didn't see it.
I didn't think of the right thing to do. Hey, Frank. See ya. Yeah. How's your meeting today, Friday night? It went good, see you. And. You
Make more sense.
I gave you this.
Hey, you didn't mean to jump where you are.
I didn't know you were.
I got it.
Yeah, well, I got email. Yeah, so maybe just a slightly got there. They're working on some problems.
Who the commissioners are? You think they are right now?
Oh, okay. Says they're only gonna have temperature.
I'm trusting you. I wish I was.
Those are the big deal.
My baby's time.
So Randy's up there right there.
Greg told me this morning, he said, actually, oh, I don't think you'll go east, I think it'll be, it'll be the, I said, I think you can't back. At least I'm.
Trying to be. And I like.
Dan Stanley.
We only look around.
We did have this. They ask you to still. Give it to me straight. Are you?
Those are pretty sad, beside me. Landon.
Landon?
Yeah.
It did, our sensible. And then, it's trust. I work at the environment. You're right.
Keep up.
They do make all the bad money stuff.
mean, they pick up a lot of water, right?
They collect all gas money.
All the grant comes back.
For many different things.
Yeah, that's what it is. Over that. Yeah. Portion of the rate. Yeah. So they know that we're getting just nothing from me. That's the first dollar this year. We get anything in our ag side bill this year or? Well, we can take it this year, yeah. But I just want I had in the farm, that's for the farm, like a few $400 on that. Well, good thing, y'all can play mechanic. Yeah. More. We didn't have to, so we needed another group, don't have a good road, but they can only use that. And we're going to break it. That's the movie, make some of them money to take. I'll get it, they do it free. But to me, it's a whole lot of sense to say, this one's going to do something. Well, this one, for real. Yeah. Right. That's kind of. We need to put a cap on those papers. If we can do that. And I know I'd rather look at one better than 69. I thought the state toward that when I went into the line. Yeah. No, it should change the numbers. Yeah, that's why I had 38. So I did not sure. We're better there about the woods. So. No, any woods might be. It's got water. That's why it was well. I had the same thing in my mind. So, that's my, there are preparing. I can't imagine if it'll be doing. Little fences. What? Oh, Lord. He's making a break for it. Oh, let me ask that.
I don't have to walk it out. It's like purification.
That's, I don't know if that's factored.
Well, that's why they don't allow you to spray weapons.
Well, what's considered?
Only if they're wet.
Water stand when you want to drain. I've never.